You won't believe what happened when our power-hungry HOA president decided to bulldoze my disabled sister's wheelchair ramp while she was at work. What this entitled neighbor didn't know was that my sister wasn't just any resident. She was the state governor. This was about to become the biggest mistake of Karen's HOA career, sparking a national scandal that involved the entire neighborhood. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe for more HOA and Karen stories. The bright yellow violation notice stuck to our front door made my blood boil. It was the 5th one this month, all targeting my sister Sarah's wheelchair ramp. I crumpled it up and added it to my growing collection of Karen Thompson's official warnings. As I heard Sarah's electric wheelchair humming up the ramp, she asked with a tired smile, "Another love letter from our wonderful neighbor." The dark circles under her eyes showed how exhausted she was from her new job, but she never complained. Not about work, not about the car accident that left her in a wheelchair 6 months ago, and not even about Karen's relentless harassment. "You'd think being HOA president would keep her busy enough without stalking our house," I said, watching through the kitchen window as Karen stood in her driveway, snapping photos of our ramp. Her perfectly highlighted hair and designer workout clothes couldn't hide the spite on her face. When we installed the ramp, we followed every rule. We hired a licensed contractor, secured city permits, and used the exact shade of grey paint to match our house trim. But Karen showed up before the concrete was dry, waving the HOA rulebook like a magic wand. Section 8, paragraph 3 clearly states all external modifications must be approved by the board, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "We have to maintain property values, you understand." What really got under my skin was how Karen kept scheduling HOA meetings about our ramp. At times, Sarah couldn't attend. Not that Sarah could have gone anyway. She was too busy running the state. That's right. My sister isn't just any homeowner. She's the governor. We kept that quiet in the neighborhood to maintain some privacy during her recovery. Last week, I caught Karen measuring the ramp with a tape measure at 6 a.m. When I confronted her, she claimed she was just doing her duty as HOA president. I started documenting everything after that, videos, notices, and a detailed log of every interaction. Something told me we'd need it. This morning was different. As I helped Sarah into her car for her physical therapy appointment, I noticed Karen huddled with 2 men in suits near her house, pointing at our ramp and gesturing dramatically. One was writing in a notebook, the other taking photos. "I don't like this," I told Sarah. "Maybe it's time we let them know who they're dealing with." Sarah shook her head. "I won't use my position for special treatment. We'll handle this the right way, through proper channels." But as I watched Karen's triumphant smile while handing thick manila envelopes to the men, I couldn't shake the feeling that following the rules might not be enough. I started recording, catching Karen's voice on the morning breeze. "Yes, we'll need that bulldozer here first thing tomorrow morning. The board has already approved the removal." My heart stopped. They wouldn't really tear down a wheelchair ramp, would they? As Sarah's car disappeared around the corner, I rushed inside to check our security cameras and grab our folder of permits. What I found in our files would change everything. A discovery that would make Karen wish she'd never heard of us. I was eating breakfast when I heard the rumble of heavy machinery outside. My spoon clattered against the bowl as I rushed to the window. There was Karen in our front yard, her red blazer and perfectly styled blonde hair unmistakable, pointing at our ramp while a man in a construction hat nodded. I grabbed my phone to record as I ran outside. The morning sun was barely up, and most neighbors were still asleep. A bright yellow bulldozer sat in our driveway, its metal blade gleaming menacingly. 2 workers in orange vests were measuring the ramp with tape, measures while Karen clutched a stack of papers like they were gold. "What do you think you're doing?" I called out, my voice shakier than I wanted. Karen's face lit up with her fake HOA meeting smile. "Oh, good. You're home," she chirped, her designer heels sinking into our grass. "I have an emergency order from the HOA board. This structure violates community guidelines. Section 423. She waved a paper in my face, but pulled it back before I could grab it. I took a deep breath. just like Sarah taught me during her campaign speeches. Karen, we submitted all the proper paperwork. We have city approval. The city isn't the HOA, dear. She cut me off, her smile unwavering. As president, it's my duty to maintain community standards. This ramp is an eyesore, bringing down property values. Just look at how it clashes with the neighborhood aesthetic. The bulldozer revved its engine and my stomach dropped. I pulled up the property maps on my phone that Sarah had me save, showing our property lines and permits. This is illegal. You can't demolish someone's property without proper notice or a court order. Karen laughed, a high-pitched sound that made my skin crawl. Notice was given 3 weeks ago via certified mail. We have the receipt right here. She showed a paper with a signature I'd never seen. I frantically called Sarah, but it went to voicemail. She was in a closed-door budget meeting. I tried her assistant, her security team, anyone, but no one answered. The workers placed orange cones around our driveway. One looked uncertain, checking his paperwork repeatedly and whispering to his colleague about something that seemed off. If you do this, I warned, my voice growing stronger, you'll hear from our lawyers. This violates the Americans with Disabilities Act. I started live streaming everything, capturing every detail. Karen's smile faltered for a second. No HOA is exempt from federal law, I shouted, loud enough that lights started coming on in neighboring houses. Our elderly neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez, poked his head out, then disappeared back inside when he saw Karen. She turned to the bulldozer operator and gave a sharp nod. The machine roared to life, its treads crunching against our driveway. I watched, in horror, as the blade lowered toward the ramp we'd spent weeks getting installed. Last chance, Karen, I said, my phone steady. You're making a huge mistake. She turned back, her eyes cold despite her smile. The only mistake was allowing this monstrosity to be built. Sometimes people need to learn that rules exist for a reason. The bulldozer's blade hit the ramp with a horrible screech of metal on concrete. I kept recording as chunks of our carefully built ramp crumbled. What they didn't notice was Mr. Rodriguez returning with his own camera and more neighbors gathering, phones raised. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah's head of security. Stay calm. Keep recording. Help is 3 minutes out. I smiled for the first time that morning, watching Karen direct the destruction like a conductor. She was so focused on her victory that she didn't notice the black SUVs turning onto our street or the distant sirens growing closer. Sometimes the biggest mistakes come from missing small details, like not knowing your neighbor is one of the most powerful people in the state. Karen was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I'll never forget the moment our quiet suburban street turned into a movie scene. As Karen high-fived her HOA cronies over their successful removal of the eyesore, the first black SUV rounded the corner, then another and another. Red and blue lights flashed everywhere. My hands shook as I kept recording. This was going to be good. Karen's smug satisfaction turned to confusion as 3 state police cruisers pulled up, followed by 5 identical black government vehicles. Neighbors who had been peeking through curtains now spilled onto their lawns. Everyone knew something big was happening. What is all this? Karen demanded, her voice cracking. This is a private neighborhood matter. That's when Sarah's lead security detail stepped out, scanning the area before opening the back door of the center SUV. The street fell silent as my sister rolled out in her wheelchair, wearing her official governor's blazer and the stern expression she used during major press conferences. Actually, Mrs. Thompson, Sarah's voice rang out, clear and strong. This became a state matter the moment you violated federal disability protection laws. She wheeled forward, her security team moving around her. Not to mention destroying state property without authorization. Karen's face cycled through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. State property? She squeaked. Yes, Sarah continued, pulling out her phone. Would you like to see the deed, or should we discuss the Americans with Disabilities Act first? I'm particularly familiar with Title II, having just signed new state protections last month. The crowd of neighbors grew larger. I spotted at least a dozen phones recording. Mrs. Jenkins from across the street was live on Facebook. But the HOA bylaws clearly state, Karen stammered, clutching her violation notices. Interesting you mention those, Sarah cut in, motioning to her assistant, who stepped forward with a thick binder. My legal team has been reviewing your HOA's bylaws all afternoon. Would you like to know what we found? Karen's board members started quietly backing away. Smart move. Multiple violations of state housing laws, discriminatory practices, and, Sarah paused for effect, irregular financial records going back 3 years. The crowd gasped. I zoomed in on Karen's face, now whiter than her violation notices. I didn't know, Karen sputtered. That I was the governor, Sarah finished. Or that bulldozing a disabled person's ramp without proper notice or permits is a federal offence? 2 state investigators stepped forward, notebooks in hand. News vans pulled up at the end of our street. Mrs. Thompson, one investigator said, we'll need you to come with us to answer questions about today's events and these financial discrepancies. As Karen was led away, still mumbling about property values and HOA bylaws, Sarah addressed the crowd. She looked every bit the leader she was, even sitting in her wheelchair amid the rubble of our ramp. My fellow neighbours, she began. Today, we have an opportunity to discuss what community really means. She gestured to the destroyed ramp. This isn't just about me or my access to my home. This is about every person's right to live with dignity in their own community. The crowd showed shame, anger, and most importantly, understanding, as I watched Karen being escorted to a police car, still clutching her rulebook. I wondered what would happen to our peaceful neighbourhood after this explosive evening, and how many other HOAs were pulling the same tricks Karen had gotten away with for years. The morning after the bulldozing, I woke to my phone buzzing like crazy. Our security camera footage had gone viral overnight, and news vans lined up outside our house. But the craziest part was a call from my old high school friend, now a civil rights lawyer, with shocking news about Karen's past. The files he sent showed Karen had been sued 3 times before for similar stunts in other neighbourhoods, always settling quietly and moving on to terrorise a new HOA. This time, she'd picked the wrong house. Sarah, being the incredible governor she is, didn't just get mad, she got organised. She held an emergency press conference on our front lawn, with the destroyed ramp's pieces scattered behind her. Reporters went wild when she presented a stack of papers showing how Karen had violated not just federal disability laws but also 17 state housing regulations. Then our elderly neighbours came forward. Mrs. Chen revealed how Karen forced her to remove her medicinal garden. Mr. Rodriguez showed documentation of fines for his veteran father's wheelchair lift. Even the quiet Baker family spoke up about threats over their autistic son's sensory-friendly playground equipment. The neighbourhood I'd known for years felt different. People were talking, sharing stories, and standing together. Karen tried to call an emergency HOA meeting to address these unfounded accusations, but only her 2 loyal board members showed up. Meanwhile, Sarah invited disability rights advocates to our house, and half the neighbourhood came to learn about accessible housing rights. Then, someone leaked Karen's HOA financial records, revealing she'd used collected fines to fund her own home renovations, claiming they were board-approved community improvements. The HOA's lawyer quit on the spot, and 3 board members resigned via angry emails that reached the local news. Karen still wouldn't back down. She showed up at our house the next morning with a cease and desist letter, demanding we stop spreading lies. She didn't expect to walk into a meeting between Sarah and the State Housing Commissioner, who was very interested in reviewing every HOA decision Karen had made in the last 5 years. The look on Karen's face when she realized her reign of terror was crumbling was almost worth the drama. But the best part was watching neighbours put up support accessible housing signs in their yards, one by one, until Karen's house stood alone without one. News helicopters captured it all, and by sunset, our story had made national headlines. Woke the next morning to hundreds of messages from neighbours sharing their own HOA horror stories. Reporters wanted to talk, but what caught my attention was an email from Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbour fined for her garden gnome. She had, Proof of Karen breaking other laws. I printed every HOA rule and spent the day highlighting parts Karen had ignored. Sarah's legal team discovered Karen never filed the proper papers to become HOA president. She just took over when the old president moved away, and no one questioned her. Then something amazing happened. Our story reached Tommy Chin, a famous YouTube lawyer who makes videos about unfair housing rules. He flew in to meet Sarah and offered to sue Karen and the HOA for free. His video about our case got millions of views in a day. Karen tried to call another emergency HOA meeting, but this time the community centre was packed. People who'd never spoken up shared stories of Karen's bullying. Mr. Jenkins showed pictures of his daughter's treehouse Karen made him tear down. The Wilson family talked about their Christmas lights Karen deemed too bright. Sarah rolled up to the microphone and didn't just talk about the ramp. She revealed her plan for a new law to protect homeowners from HOA abuse, called the Right to Home Happiness Act. The room erupted in cheers. Our security camera footage showed Karen had lied on official papers about getting permission to bulldoze the ramp, and her own lawyer dropped her case. 2 days later, we watched Karen pack up her prized rose bushes, the ones she'd forced everyone to copy, and move away. The new HOA board is amazing. They turned the old violations office into a community help centre. Instead of fines, they send welcome baskets to new neighbours and started a program to help elderly residents with home repairs. Sarah's ramp was rebuilt, better than before, with local artists painting it with flowers and adding soft, glowing lights. Neighbourhood kids think it's the prettiest thing on our street. Last week, Sarah held a barbecue for the neighbourhood in our backyard. Watching everyone laugh and share food where Karen once yelled about grass height rules made me realise something huge. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. The bulldozing company now offers free ramp installations to disabled residents statewide, and their CEO personally apologised to Sarah. They even started a scholarship fund for students studying disability rights law. The biggest surprise came yesterday. I was promoted to run the state's new homeowner protection office, teaching other neighbourhoods how to turn their HOAs from bullies into helpers. Sarah says we're just getting started, and looking at how much has changed in a year, I believe her. Our story made it into school textbooks as an example of standing up to unfair rules. But the real victory isn't in the headlines or new laws. It's in the little things, like Mrs. Rodriguez's growing garden gnome army or kids playing freely on their lawns without fear of violation notices. Karen's old house sold last week. The new family has 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a wheelchair ramp for their grandmother. No one complained. Instead, 5 neighbours helped them unpack. That's when I knew we didn't just change an HOA, we changed minds.